Theoretically, I am live on the interwebs now. And if that is the case, can you plug your sword, Samurai Bird? Sure, plug your sword. You have a sword? Sword to plug? If you do it, are they going to be bird themed? Well, anyway, Samurai Bird is, I'm sure, furiously typing a response. Hi, I have been off the internet for a minute, not that long. I just, I had some time scheduled tonight to do some other sword-related activities. I figured I might as well get while the sword is good, and while I have some energy and time set aside. So I figured, what the hell? I'll hop on the interwebs and shoot the old shit about some sorts. That's the plan. No particular agenda, but I'm happy to answer questions. And if none are asked, of course, I can drone on about sword-related things for some time. I do see there are some folks in the chat, which thank you for joining. Always cool that I can pop on the internet. People are able to join, even though I don't schedule them or tell anyone I'm doing them or any of the things that successful, competent people do. But I'm glad you guys could join. Zombie, hello. Alex, hello. Carl, hello. You missed what happened, Bird. You asked if you could plug your sword, and I said yes, you can. I'm not sure what sword you want to plug, but if you want to plug the sword, I'm not sure what sword. Are you making swords now? Bird's line of, and this is the parrot, and this is the big bird, and this is the other various kinds of birds. It'd be good. What is your opinion on the best steel for a strong, sharp katana? I think that all depends on what you want to do with it. So if you're a person that uses a sword exclusively for Iaido, or if you primarily use a sharp sword for Tamashigiri, if you want something for the zombie apocalypse, if you want something that is forgiving, right, and just generally more durable than anything else, and you have unlimited budget or generally durable on a budget, those are all kind of have different answers in terms of what the best steel would be, because you need different things. You favor different things, and metallurgy and swords are all a bunch of trade-offs, as I've been led to believe. So you can't get something that has unlimited everything, right? There's edge retention at the cost of what you might consider resilience or durability in other ways. Likewise, if you have something that you can do multiple bad strikes into a fence post on, then you have something that's very resilient, and it's not likely going to withstand that and have like really, really great edge retention. So it's a balance. It depends on what you want. Generally speaking, though, I tested an S7 katana some moons ago. It held up really, really well in terms of doing really dumb, abusive stuff with it in a way that I thought was significantly better than some others had. 1060 also tends to be really good on a budget. If you're doing like competitive Tamashigiri or something like that, I'd imagine, and you have good technique, you probably want something that maybe favors edge retention. I tested a 3V blade, and while it wasn't a katana, it held up really, really well. It was like shaving sharp after cutting lots and lots and lots of brush. And I still have the nubbin of that thing, and it still has pretty much a razor sharp edge, even though I've used it as like a camp tool since. So doing normal type cutting has been amazing with that sword. And if you used 3V steel to cut fence posts, it would likely shatter quickly. But if you use it to cut more normal targets, the edge retention is really, really good. So again, all depends on what your version of best is, but there isn't just one everything button, unfortunately. There's no everything bagel when it comes to swords. The Samurai Bird model by Murasame. Let's look at it. Is that something I can find on the internet? Ah, sword's falling over. Caught it. I wonder if the microphone is picking up my kid screaming in the background. Throw a link out, Bird, if you have it. And yes, cool. You got a sword made by a company. Yeah. So S7 is a good steel. Chavy. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. S7 is a I don't really know what it's made out of or what makes it special, other than I tested one and it seemed to hold an edge reasonably well, and also took a lot of strikes to break. It was the company is now called Cloudhammer Steelworks, but at the time it was called Bizer. I have no way of even validating, honestly, if the sword is made out of S7, but that's what I was told it was made out of, and it held up really, really quite well. But that is, I would think of it honestly as like a durability at potentially the expense of other things, right? Like, do you plan on whacking metal stakes in the backyard? Like, if that's the kind of durability you want, and in fairness, if that's what you want, then cool. It held up really well to that kind of stuff. By contrast, though, I've had other swords made of other steels, a lot of other steels that held an edge better. And so if you're going to be cutting more normal stuff with a sword, then potentially a different steel would work better. John, hello. Carl, had Chris Lohman respond to an email. I suppose I can click this. That's why I do Yardbird or StreamYard. See, you got Samurai Bird. I'm confusing all the birds. Chris Lohman responded to an email on some fittings for a Simon Lee blade I wanted remounted. Pretty excited. I hope the best. Some of those Simon Lee blades, he did some pretty cool polishes on things. So hopefully you get something zazzy that you're happy with. All right. Alex, the best swords are the ones you have and enjoy. Almost impossible. All right. Well, yeah, it's fair. I think there's a notion just from a modern consumer that comes in to swords, and everybody starts somewhere, right? But that, like in most areas, you can spend more money, and there's a point of diminishing returns that might be different for everyone, but usually you can spend more money and get like everything better. You can get faster, more resilient, and all of those things can increase simultaneously, and it's a matter of cost rather than a matter of possibility. And it seems in steel that, there's some stuff that they combine that makes it, an order of magnitude. It can improve all things, granted, but it still seems like there's some limits on, resilience and edge retention. Having a really, really hard, in terms of like an HRC style blade, having a really hard steel that therefore can retain an edge, and the brittleness that comes with it, and its ability to absorb shock. Because if you have a long sword, they wibble and wobble quite a bit, and its ability to kind of take that kind of tension even under normal circumstances. Balancing all those things is just that. There's a balance to it, in contrast to just spending more money and getting something that can have the hardest edge and the most resilient. There's just not, as I understand it, a way to do both of those things simultaneously. Is Dragon King okay? Yeah, I've had a few swords from Dragon King. They seemed all right. Basically seem like a similar value proposition to Hanwei. So if I contrast Hanwei and Dragon King, there's a few different types of steels that are offered, a few different type of blade shapes. Generally, the Dragon Kings that I had felt good. They have some unique fittings as well, which, well, unique isn't the right word, but a little bit more bespoke to their companies, as opposed to, drawing from the same parts bin that you might see everyone else use. And so there's some uniqueness to the blade, and they don't tend to have the same shape as everything else. There's a little bit more variety between Hanwei and Dragon King in the shapes of the actual blades themselves, in contrast to the standard 27.5-inch blade with the same shape that we see a lot from a lot of other forgers. So yes, I think they make good stuff. They're a little bit more expensive. They're not without flaw. They have they're not perfect, but they tend to do okay. Anyways, I think that's it. And hello, John. Eric, hello. Glad folks are jumping in. I do have some swords roundabout that I can talk briefly about. And one of them that I want to share first, I posted a picture about it, but I've had a little bit more time to play with this. And this is a messer from Lands Connect Emporium, courtesy of sword friend Ian. So tip of my hat again to him for a very generous gift. But this is kind of a mix between the Gunther and the Gustav. A little bit of features that I liked on both swords, and it's really cool. Adam at Lands Connect Emporium also did a little bit of extra file work on this one, making it a little bit of a deviation from what you'd normally get. So if you wanted extra bedazzlements, I know that they can be done, but it probably would cost a chunk. And then thinking the hilt is really, really cool. And I haven't had something, at least sword wise, with antler on it before to play with. And this has been more fun than I expected. I thought it would feel, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I thought it'd feel like coarse and rough, and it does, but not like in a bad way. The antler actually really helps you feel grip. Like it really, your fingers really lock onto it, and it's easy to hang on to. So the way this was done, I like it a lot more than I expected. And it also has like a certain kind of rugged charm to it that I think blends pretty well. Anyway, it's more similar to a Gustav or Gunther in blade shape. It's got this longer blade, and then a kind of the top third, the back third has been sharpened, and the back third is quite sharp. Scabbard is one of the more simple Lands Connect Emporium pieces, and I had this little extra leather bit that I put on it. Otherwise, it was just a more simple leather scabbard, but it doesn't rattle, holds on pretty good, and I like the extra. Maybe I can get it closer to the camera so people can actually see it. But no, don't focus on my dumb face. Focus on the sword. Here we go. There we go. Yeah, you can see this extra little file work in here adds a little bit of charm. And then down here, I don't think this is necessarily different than their normal pommel. Maybe it is, but the extra detail and file work is, in my mind, really cool. Locks into my hand pretty good. It's super sharp, and I haven't gotten actually a chance to really cut much with it because I got some tennis elbow going on. But it's awesome. It's a really cool sword, and I was surprised at how much like the extra little detail and pattern working. It doesn't appear to be like a huge amount of stuff on the crossguard itself. Like this detail to me it's not a huge amount of embellishment, but just that little extra, I think really, I don't know, it zazzes it up in a way that's very special to me. I think it's pretty cool. It also feels pretty good. I like the knuckle guard on it. It feels like it wouldn't be fun to get punched in the face. And I like that the naggle, by contrast to the cold steel one that I have, doesn't move around. it's in there solid. So that is one that I've been toying around with recently, and it's been pretty fun to play with. I'll go back over to the old questions. One thing with Dragon King is the glue down the Shirudome. That's a fair point. I didn't notice they glued them down or not. I don't remember. It's not a point that stands out, but that is good. There are a lot of folks that don't, and you're right. It is poopy. The master made me videos of him making katana personally, and I really appreciated that. If you can get somebody to show you something in the like while they're making it, I think that's pretty cool too. It certainly makes the piece a lot more special. I would say that it would do that for me as well. This community has some of the nicest dudes. I'm grateful to be here today and to see you all drop. Well, cool, Alex. That's a kind note to drop down. This community does have some very cool people in it. I was talking to somebody about doing like content creation earlier today, and it's like you totally dawns on me that like 99.99% of the stuff is overwhelmingly positive. And I got to go through a laundry list of cool things that have happened since I started blabbering on YouTube. Unfortunately, the point of my conversation was that it's kind of human nature to focus on the one negative, but it's always a good reminder that there is a lot of cool out there. I really want to learn more about katanas. Which blade is best? I mean, that's not. I think the more you learn, the more you'll understand that question is not one that's possible to answer. There's a lot of things that are good, and honestly, there's a lot of things that don't really, maybe defy reason, right? Maybe a good example of that is that I have a fascination with the Hanwei bamboo mat. I've had swords that are, you might say, pretty expensive and fancy in my collection and go through my hands. But if you ask me which one do I like the most, it's a relatively cost-effective production sword, all things considered. And I've had it remounted, and I really like that particular one. Unfortunately, I don't like the other ones. I like that specific one sword that I held, and the other examples of the bamboo mat that I've held, I haven't liked as much. But sometimes you just find something that you also really, really like the feel of, and then that sticks with you. And it doesn't have to be because it's the best stuff or fancy, or it can just be because you like it. What would be the top 5 blades? So I need you to be like a little bit more specific with the questions. I do have favorites, right? But like if you're looking for the top 5 katanas, then even I need like for what activity? For collecting, for durability, for use as a training tool. It'd be tough to answer. Just general favorites. There's some that I certainly do find impressive that stand out to me as really cool. But I don't know if it's going to be targeting actually what you're after. Kingfisher, hello. All right. I'm really thinking of getting a katana from Rado. Do you have any of his blades right now? I don't, and I never have. But many moons ago, I pinged Rado for a design of a Mitsudome style Suba, and he quoted me a price, and I just like the project that I was going to use the thing on fell through, but I really liked the design that he had, and I think very highly of the photos that I've seen from his work. I've never held or gotten to play with a sword that he's made, so I can't say from firsthand experience, but I think the photos that he takes are pretty well. They also tell a pretty compelling story, and it looks pretty good. It looks like he does really, really, really solid work, and if you give him time and money, he can do some pretty amazing stuff. So I wouldn't begrudge you going after a sword from Rado. It looks pretty good. I also I happen to like his artistic style in things. I think the blade profiles he goes after and some of the fittings and stuff that he's made, it's not just that he executes well, but like he's got an eye that artistically I think is also really good. At least I was kind of excited about having some Mitsudome fittings made. That was years ago though, and I haven't had a new set of those fittings made in quite some time. I've had like other fitting sets kind of laying around and haven't had cause to make anymore. But yes, I think highly of his blade, but I don't have any around to show. And I haven't had any, actually. I don't think I've actually ever held one from Rado. Son used a customized bamboo mat on Instagram for $625. If I were not in the middle of a home purchase, congrats on a home. So good luck moving, because oh god, it takes the piss out of you, man. Yeah, Eric, I'm a big proponent of the Hanwei bamboo mat. When people say what's your favorite, I say that, but like I don't think it's necessarily helpful to other people. Do be aware though that like the one I like is just different. It feels different. It's heavier than most bamboo mats. So arguably, I think most people would probably prefer the feel of most of the other bamboo mats that I've had. But of all of the examples of Hanwei bamboo mats, if I measure just the bare blades, the one that I have is like a variation that is just much heavier. I want to say it was like 8 or 9 ounces heavier in the blade, the bare blade, than the other bamboo mats, which is maybe I'm embellishing or not remembering the story right, but it's a significant and meaningful amount for a bare katana. That's like half a pound. It's like it's chunkier than some of the other guys out there. Normally the bamboo mats feel a little bit more nimble. The bamboo mat that I have has more in common feeling wise, I think, with the lion dog than some of the other bamboo mats that I have, which is, maybe it started that way. Maybe it was a lion dog that broke and that's how I ended up with it. For cutting, I want to challenge my uncle to a cutting contest. Depends on what you're cutting. If it's tamashigiri and you're cutting tatami mats, then the best blades that I could point you to would be something from probably Evolution Blades, Motohara. They do some really great tamashigiri style blades. So if that's what you're cutting, then those are great. They're about $3,000, give or take. And they're very nice swords, and they do just about everything right. I sometimes wish that I saw blades from Motohara that had just a little different artistic style. It's not fair to say they do have a style to them, but it's I don't know. I don't see a lot of like flamboyance or goofy stuff from them. And sometimes I wish I would just see what happened if they tried a bunch of different paint colors or something like that and went a little off the wall. But I think they make excellent swords. If you want to do it on a budget, the Hanwei XL line does tamashigiri really well. Andrew, do you find horizontal cuts? Yes. If I'm doing a suihei, that's the name of the horizontal cut that you perform in Toyama Ryu when you're doing tamashigiri. It's a tricky one. I don't find it to be terribly hard most of the time because I'm a big dude, and so cutting through the mat is not necessarily the challenge. But I have to like do a little horsey stance and kind of get low to cut, usually where if you're doing rokudangiri and you're doing like the 6th cut, which is the horizontal, the last cut you do is this horizontal cut. It's pretty low on the mat, and so getting down there to an angle and standing in a way that it'll typically stand and doing a perfectly flat cut is not something that I'm capable of doing often, if at all. But getting through the mat isn't a hard thing, but doing it well is a challenge. Hopefully that answers your question. You need to check out the Nagamaki Jesus Hernandez made. I think I've seen the one. That might be the one the Mystery Man in Black did many moons ago. It looks like it has a boat oar kind of thing. I think I've seen one from Mr. Hernandez. No worries. I hope you're doing well. Sorry to ask you, do you have a future project video with Albion Mercenary? I want to sharpen it and touch base on it again, especially if I can get it like razor sharp. But I've kind of rehashed it and talked a little bit about it in a what's my favorite longsword video. And so I've talked and kind of more articulately covered some of the things that I like about it. I probably will talk about it sometime in the future again, though, just because I really like the sword. I don't plan on getting rid of it. And of the swords that I cut with and play with and handle a lot, that happens to be one of them. It's very special to me, so I will probably do it some more. But in fairness, at the moment, I don't really have a whole lot more to offer. I haven't sharpened it more than what I've shown already. It's more than my original review. If you check out that kind of favorite longsword video, you'll probably see some. But I haven't gotten any keener than that, and I haven't done anything particularly special with it, and I don't have anything really great to compare it to. So I don't know that I'll do anything soon because I don't have much to add to the conversation. But if there's something that would be useful to see, let me know. Oh my. Already at 30 people here. that's surprising. Hey everyone, I'm on the Katana show now. RVA Katana. Hello. It is John. Hopefully it's John and not just somebody stealing your account. I actually have the sword visor sent my way. I opened this, I think, on stream or talked about it already, and I haven't played with it a whole lot because I've been doing EI with some of the other, not visor, Cloudhammer swords. But I had it out here just because somebody asked if there was a yokote on the sword, and there is, but it's very, very faint, and maybe you can kind of see it. It's like buffed over. You can feel it with your finger, but it like doesn't stand out a whole lot. But there is one on this sword, and I had it handy, and I really like the habaki on here. That's my favorite man jewelry detail. John Andresen used to say habaki are like man jewelry, and that stands out to me as very jeweled for kind of a production kind of sword. Anyway, hello. That was Is every 1095 katana shatter bomb? No. I've had swords that were made out of 1095. Like one that comes to mind that held up well was one from Swords of Northshire. I've had swords likewise that exploded in my face maybe a little easier, that were differentially hard in 1095. I think it just depends. It doesn't inherently have to mean that it's going to explode or be overly brittle. It certainly has the potential to be more than 1045 does or 1060, but if properly done, it can be resilient and good steel for a sword. At least if the 1095 swords that I'm basing that on were in fact 1095 and not something else. I don't. Well, I've seen things advertised as L6 Unokobe Zukuri. I think anyway, I've seen them in there. I recall Howard Clark talking about putting bohi in L6 and like it just not being a thing. And I don't recall the reason, if it's because it's already light and you can reduce weight other ways, or if it's challenging to do in a way that is just not fun. I'm not exactly sure, but doing an Unokobe Zukuri L6, at least with all the bohis and stuff like that, I'm not sure. Anyway, no, I don't have anything to direct to, unfortunately. My enthusiasm and slurred mouth noises. Well, cheers to you, sir. If I didn't just have ice cream, I'd crack a beer open, but ice cream and beer make Matt's tummy very upset. All right, I'm losing chat, so I'm going to move down a little bit, see if I can catch up. You and my dad have the exact same face. We may be brothers. My parents were frisky, so it's entirely possible he's a lost twin. On a budget. So there's certainly options that you can get. There's certainly options. But if you know, that's why you got to be very specific. The Hanwei Practical XL, I think, was what I was talking about. And those are, $200-300, $400. That could be off inflation. Might be different now. But as I recall, those are more inflatable, and they also cut really well. There was a Howard Clark L6 Unokobe that went for $3 a few weeks ago. Was it Unakobe Sakura? Well, I wonder if he had the bohi in it then. I recall something about him not, which is incidentally a fantastic deal. If it's an unpolished finished blade, that would, cost $5 to get from Howard. So if it's in a size that was good, somebody got a pretty solid deal. I have a L6 that I sent off to be done up not too long ago. So I'm hopeful that projects move along. Which incidentally, I still don't have any updates on the My Little Pony Katana, unfortunately. I need somebody that can 3D print fittings, I think, is maybe the direction I'm going to have to go to get something done. And John, you should, next time one comes up, I would encourage it. Spend some money, get some fancy stuff. Grain direction is the thing about it too. That's a fair point, Kingfisher. So doing horizontal cuts, if you're cutting a tatami mat or a piece of wood or something like that, usually the grain is going to be going vertically, and you're cutting kind of perpendicular to the grain, and that can make things hard too. It certainly is more of a challenge. Also, if you're cutting downward in a diagonal way, you're pushing things into your stand or the ground, and it tends to aid you in the cut. Horizontally, you don't necessarily have the same help. And if you're doing like an upper diagonal cut, I tend to cut through things, or I tend to fling the whole stand in the air or knock it over or something like that. So that's one of the pros of being a more sizable person, is that I'm just big, and my arms have mass that get added to the sword. So most of the time, regardless of what I'm cutting with, if it has a reasonable edge, my size makes up for bad angles, and it makes up for mediocre edges and more challenging cuts. But I don't necessarily have the technique to do more challenging things well that kind of demonstrate a cut, like a tombo cut, the kind of dragonfly cut, where you have a piece of your mat on top of laid horizontally on top of another cut mat. Unsecured is an important bit here, and then you execute 2 cuts, and you're able to cut successfully through both, doing clean 45-degree angles, and ideally the last little bit of mat stays on top. I'm not describing it well, as if you haven't seen what I'm talking about, then you're probably like, what the hell is this man saying? But it's called a tombo cut. It's hard to do, and very proficient people can execute 2 kind of downward diagonal cuts on a unsecured piece of horizontally laid mat, and then the mat is left in place afterwards. Shout out to Kristen Fletcher, commissioned a scabbard with a dragon or fish scale design for my Albion Discerner. He's killing it. He's an amazing artist. I haven't ever worked with him directly, but I've certainly seen his stuff, and I think I've owned a few pieces that he's had a hand in, and they are excellent. He does a really good job. Dirty Scout, you missed all. I answered the meaning of life, so you'll have to go back and check it out. It wasn't 42. That's the surprise. Everyone thought it was. It's not. Question for you, Matthew. That is me. Do you look into knives? Sometimes I personally find them more useful and interesting than swords, but I like swords more. I like knives. I like knives a lot. I've had a few companies reach out to ask me to review knives. I'm a little bit more hesitant sometimes because I frankly have lots of swords to review, and I'm a little more known for it. And I think there's just more knowledgeable people that review knives, and there's usually more information on them. But every now and again, I say yes. I know there's some kitchen knives that might come my way in the not too distant future, and I'm always happy to take a look at knives. But it's it's in my wheelhouse, but just slightly. It's like an adjacent wheelhouse, if you will. I do like knives. I tend to think of them more utility based, though. I mean, I think I've talked through some of the stuff I have in my collection, and I certainly have an enthusiast level of knives, right? There's a couple lingering around, but I do tend to look at them more practically as well. And yeah, they're a little bit more tool-esque. I can appreciate pretty knives and craftsmanship in a knife as well, but I tend to like keep them in my pocket and use them or bring them out, and they get dirty and dingy, and I don't. A lot of the swords that I have, I review, but I also sell and trade and swap, and sometimes in my mind they're like inventory, or they're things that I'm not going to use, but I'm gonna talk about it and appreciate just for the visual. And I don't. It's not true. I do have a knife like that, and it's an Ed Martin knife, and it's not particularly beautiful, but it's just really expensive, and I'm nervous about screwing it up. But I really like it. They tend to be more tools to me, though. I tend to more want to use them, take them out, and carry them around and use use them for their intended purpose. But I do like them. Yes, absolutely. I think knives are awesome. They're super cool. Would it be helpful if it's an interesting question. Like, if it meant less sword videos, would it be neat to see me ramble about knives? I like knives. I don't know if my take on them is as useful, but it's something I've noodled about. Scab has talked about work tough stuff. He was talking about something on a stream yesterday, and I mentioned that I wouldn't mind playing around with one of those and stabbing it into things and playing around with some different knives myself. So maybe, anyway, if there's any interest, I suppose, let me know. I bought a cheap katana from Fiddlestein, and it was cheap, $160, but it was great. Chopping tree branches like 2 to 3 inches thick. So I ordered 2 custom katanas, which will be better made. Hopefully, yeah. That's also a little bit of a risky thing, right? Sometimes they are better made, and sometimes they are the same made, but just cost more. Let me know what you think of them. Will you throw any more swords in the future? Yes, there will be more sword chucking someday. At the moment, my elbow is not going to cooperate with it. I also have to find a new sword chucking tree. I have trees on the property, which I think will work. Unfortunately, there's a pond in the place that I live now, and it's a little easier to maybe chuck swords into it. So I'm going to have to figure out the best way to go. But there's a pretty sizable hill on my property, and if I can get around it, behind it, then I'm pretty sure I will have a way where I won't throw the sword, it won't hurt anyone, and it also won't fly into a pond. And if I miss, it'll go into the ground. So that seems good. I think I have something, but there's a lot of brush to clean up, which I might have to use a sword to get through. Have you ever cut fly down? No. If you're asking if I've been able to successfully cut a fly, I mean, it's possible. Nothing comes to mind, though. I don't think that's something I've done. I think I did whack a hornet once. There was just like a bunch of them around, and I think I successfully chopped a hornet, but not like a fly in like a cool, meaningful way in like a single swing. I think once I swung at a hornet that was flying around several times and eventually whacked it, but it was far from graceful or cool looking. All right. I am so far behind on chat. I'm sorry. Trying to catch up. Does HSTS do some amazing 1095s? I've heard of their 1095. People seem to really enjoy it. I know Eric's chiming in about it too. People seem to really like HSTS that have them. I did not. I had, I believe, 2 pieces from HSTS, and both were like old prototype and used when I got them. And I bought them because they were HSTS, but I don't think it gave me a fair representation of what they were, because I certainly didn't think very much of them and sold them pretty quick. They weren't bad, but they were very heavily used and not particularly special. So I moved on, but I didn't get any of their nicer swords in hand or really get to play much with them. But a lot of people have and have really liked them. I'm not sure if they're still doing a lot of stuff or not. made some S5s with bohi, and out of every 10, they ruined 3. That's they ruined 3 because it was hard to grind out. That seems to be an unfortunate outcome of sometimes grinding in bohi. I gotta take care of the porn stars. Ice cream and beer does sound like but concoction in the morning. That is a the downside too is that I really, really like hot sauce. So I can do like a meal with hot sauce and then have some ice cream and not really be too much worse for wear. In fact, it might help. But if I mix beer in there with ice cream, the mud butt is real. It's not going to be great. I'm sure you guys don't want to hear too much about that, but so I'll just stop. But yes, that's why no beer. No beer. It's either or. I'm smart enough in my old age to choose ice cream or beer in a day and stay in my lane for the rest of the evening. All right, am I catching up on chat? Sorry if I'm screwing stuff up. If I missed your question. You should pair up with a YouTube metalcaster and make some fittings. That would be fun. Do you have anyone in mind? House tour. Probably. Well, my house is a bit shambly at the moment because I don't really have any excuse. It's funny because I rented out my old place, and the folks that are renting it are wonderful people, and they were moved in and clean, and it looked lived in and well designed. I went over to do a little bit of work over there, and I was like, wow. And my house has got boxes and like stuff laying around, and there's still like I have to chip away at it. I have to like put one box away, like do one thing to feel like I'm making progress. But I'm not sure a house tour is in the cards. I can maybe do a room tour though, because my camera is mobile. Well, not mobile, but it's attached to a cord. And here's my face. Let's zoom out. There we go. So I can turn around and show this wall of stuff, which maybe I can do better. Okay, so here's a wall of stuff, and there's some swords up there that stare at me in the face that I need to review. There's pieces from Yes Katana. There's my bamboo mat. This is the piece from Zisei. That's a Hanshu wakizashi, and there's some other favorites and stuff up there. These are broken sword tips. I tend to hang on to them as trophies. There is the wakizashi. These shelves don't fit a lot of stuff in, so they tend to get cluttered with this, that, and the other. We've got computers with the chat that I'm reading. Here's empty walls. It's very, very amazing here. There's a lonely speaker and some old desktop games. Got Oblivion in there. There's a room full of swords though. I don't think the cord is going to stretch over there. But in that closet is lots and lots of swords. That's where I stuck them all, and they're sitting there waiting for me to clean and do stuff with. Hopefully I can get my camera back to where it was so that my dumb face shows up. Okay, good enough. Anyway, there is the room tour. At some point, maybe I'll do a live from my sword closet, and you can ask me questions about all the swords sitting around me, because they're all just kind of draped around. Anyway, yeah, house is nice. It's very close to a highway though, so it's got a lot more road noise, which makes it tough to capture audio outside. Do you shop for ancient fittings on eBay, or do you figure out that the price translate to authenticity? No, there's a lot of shenanigans on eBay. There's a lot of shenanigans, frankly, in papered what appear to be authentic Japanese swords. There's and fittings. There's certainly stories of people, making fittings, trying to emulate the work of somebody, and then having it papered in a shinsa. So it's tough to make really any 100% guarantees. But I think there's certainly a lot of authentic pieces out there. What I do find that you can see on eBay is work that shows like carving and metal work that's not cast, that was hard to do, that took skill, that has artistry in it. And it may not be somebody of any particular notoriety, but you can usually tell like what's made with chisels and kind of more traditional or harder techniques, and was not cast. Those things also they take more time and generally tend to be worth more money. And you can often find a thriftier deal on a piece made like that on eBay than you can having one commissioned or made. I don't know how to take that question. Are you calling me fat? I don't know what the size of Steven Seagal is, but I've seen pictures and I like to think I got a little bit more room before that, but maybe not. HST is kind of on hiatus. If dude pops up with a batch, though, I'll be shouting from the mountaintops. All right. So far behind on chat. I'm sorry. What do you think of the ancient fitting select? Well, I think I just answered that. Sometimes I think dragons who want to sleep in a pile of shaky knives and spears and swords and seal, some gold coin. Yeah. I must have missed a part in chat. I don't know that I really want to sleep on either. I think we used to have like a big penny jar and like a bunch of change. And I remember as a kid, like I laid on it and tried to do like a Scrooge McDuck thing. It's not very comfortable. Definitely take bed, carpet, even just like concrete floor, probably. Recently picked up a Ryujin T10 for $329. Hope I didn't make an error. Any thoughts on T10 steel? Generally, nowadays, Ryujin, it's been a while since I've reviewed the sword from them that I reviewed many moons ago. I don't think that they make bad products, but I don't think if they haven't evolved, and it's been, again, a few years since I played with them, which incidentally, I did reach out and ask for another sample, but I haven't heard anything back. If they haven't evolved, then there's just more compelling offerings for $320, and that would be my only critique of them. I still think they make good products. They hold up. They're nice enough. They have some good stuff. At the same time, though, $329 can actually get you quite a lot. I keep going back to something that I reviewed from Ryan Sword a long time ago. That was a laminated blade that felt really nice and had a very nice profile to it. It had a slightly embellished saya with some ribbing on it. It had a pretty cool Suba and some Mitsudome themes on it. And it felt really nice and it was really sharp. And I thought it had a lot of character and was cool. And of the swords that I've broken for posterity, that's one that stands out that I kind of wish I had been able to hold on to. It was a really nice sword and it was $350-ish or something like that. And if I compare that to the through hardened T10 Ryujin sword that I reviewed many moons ago, that would be about the same price. I would probably go with the Ryan sword variety. It had, I thought, a lot more sword for the money. Not that it's necessarily like more durable or anything like that, but like the shape and feel and some of the character of the sword, I thought were a little bit nicer for similar money. Check out Edmund Davidson's Integral Knives. Some pure works of art. Ridiculous. I like his Gola 2. I don't look at them too often. The fancy art knives and stuff like that, especially, I don't tend to look at. Sometimes I see some things on YouTube. Kyle Royer, I know he makes, like he's got his own unique style of knives and stuff like that making, but I enjoy the process. I enjoy I enjoy how they look. But I don't tend to look at the knives the arty knives as much as I do the swords. There's only so much time in the day. I prefer the big girls. It is funny though, like I think of when I see sword makers make knives, I don't have a whole lot of examples, but Howard Clark and Rick Barrett both make knives, and they also make a lot of swords. I've seen also obviously Tanto and smaller Japanese style swords and whatnot, but Rick Barrett I think makes some really remarkable and very pretty knives, and he also makes some amazing swords. And the knives share some sword character, but he's got some kind of unique takes, and I think he also fancied himself a knife maker for quite a while. He did it professionally and did some stuff. I'm not sure if he's still doing it or not now, but in any regard, he made some very, very pretty looking knives. And Howard Clark also has made some knives. They look like knives. I don't know that I've seen. I don't know if I could pick Howard's out instinctively the same way I could Rick's. I don't know if they stylistically like jump out the same way. But I see that when I see knife makers make swords, though, sometimes it goes a little different because and I don't know if it's universal. Maybe I'm painting with a wide brush that I shouldn't, because I don't watch a lot of knife makers who then make swords. But I have seen it done a few times, and it looks more like a big knife than a sword. Like it looks thick and doesn't have the same profile and stuff like that. They tend to look a little different. Would you do destruction videos of knives if you did? I would. I'm kind of moving away from breaking everything, and not because I don't feel weird about it. The breaking stuff started as one, it was fun, but also I don't like to collect money from a vendor, and I don't like to have anything of value at the end. And I feel like if I get the knife, then I had something of value, and it makes me feel weird. And that's just me. And I still feel weird, and I still don't like it. But breaking stuff takes a lot of time, and it's dangerous, and you have to be careful, and you have to prepare for it, and it's a little bit more to do than just going out and using it even abusively. But like to intentionally break it and bring it to that point is a bit of an exercise. So I'm starting to move away from doing that with everything. I'll still do it. It's not that I'm going to avoid it entirely. So I'd probably break some knives if it was of value, but I'm not sure that it's of value the same way. Mostly because there are, with knives, especially the ones that I would review, there's probably already a good amount of content about it. In contrast to swords, there's very few. If you try to look up swords on any of the manufacturers that I talk about, there's not like, there hasn't been another video typically for months, sometimes years, about the same topic. And sometimes I'm the only video that gets made. In contrast with most of the knives I'm sure that I'd get a chance to look at, there's probably a handful of videos in a year at least. Anyway, I'm not sure if it would be as useful. Maybe it would be. I'm not sure. Mixing it up with a knife review. Oh, I'm so far behind in chat that I'm it's the part where you're responding to me about talking about knives. Oh, I gotta catch up. Sword throwing. Yes. Well, the sword throwing, as you mentioned it became a part of it because so much of the conversation that I've had around the tests, for lack of a better word, that I do are like, how does it simulate actual scenario in one way, shape, or form, right? So I'm not doing anything particularly scientific in that I'm not doing it consistently. I change, the weather changes, the force, all that stuff changes. There's no scientific methodology exactly implemented here. But throwing the sword could easily be, dropping it or something like that. It's not too far off if you were using a sword on horseback or on a battlefield or something like that, and you dropped it, or it hit a pike and bounced out of your hand or was smacked out of your hand. It could be not terribly dissimilar from that. Now, hitting a tree would maybe be a worst case scenario, but it seemed reasonably representative of a thing that could kind of happen, and some of the forces that might be exerted on a sword if they did. So that was why it came to be. I know it's not exactly scientific and nothing I'm doing is, but it shows some things like if the handles start to rattle apart, if if it withstands that with no rattles and it's perfectly straight and there's no issues and it's just a little dirty from, going into the ground, fantastic. But if rattles develop or if it takes a sustained bend, I think there's information that you can infer from that. All right, I'm gonna try and scroll down on the old chat here, and I'm sorry if you ask me a question and I miss it. I'm gonna. Oh man, StreamYard does not give me a great idea of how much more chat there was. Okay, so I'm sorry if I missed your question. If I did, ask it again. Maybe I'll get to it. Let's see, Alex, you mentioned Ryan's sword. I wish there were videos of the Brinsker sword that looks like a nice wall piece. I don't know what that one is. I wish there were more videos about swords too. Then I wouldn't have to make them so much. Have you ever tried Lou sword? I think I know which brand it's LYU. I don't know the spelling either. I think I know which one you're talking about though. I have had one many moons ago. I haven't had a review sample or anything to check out. I can tell you that people seem generally happy with them, but I don't have any really relevant. I have some firsthand experience. None of it's so old that I don't think it's particularly relevant to talk through. Matthew, thank you for your thoughts on Ryujin. I appreciate taking the time to answer my question. No problem. I'm glad I could answer somebody's question. I'm not great at chat. I tend to babble and then I lose track and and then I can't catch up. Anyway, if I missed your question, anyone, I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask it again. I'll try to get it. Suck at chat. While I'm talking about swords though and other companies, this is one that I kept around. Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. This is the Dragon Sword. Somebody mentioned that Dragon Sword is not necessarily affiliated with Zisei, but like there's a former employee of Zisei I don't know. I honestly don't know the story. The Dragon Sword company reached out to me and asked me if I would review, and I said sure, and they sent me a couple samples, and that's basically the story. But when I got the box, the other one that I got is through hardened and a little less remarkable, but this one looks really good, and it has a pretty solid, nice polish on it. It looks really pretty. No bohi, and it has an iron tsuba on it, or I don't know about iron, but metal and slightly patinated different. Things are reasonably tight, and it feels pretty good in the hand. It's actually a meatier feeling sword than what you'd expect, and there's a little bit of attention to the scabbard as well. It has a slight taper and thins out down in this section. It's like, I think if I pinch it really hard, I could break it. Like it's pretty thin, but if you're using it as a training tool, it's not so bad. So this is, let's see if I can get it in the old camera here. There we go. Yeah, it looks like it has a burnished Kasaki. A little bit more attention to detail than I'm used to seeing. And I think this is around $500-ish. Anyway, I was surprised. I didn't expect to. I wasn't really sure what to expect. Sometimes people will ask me on a chat like, "Hey, look at this sword," and in looking at this, the Tsuba looks reminiscent of things that I've seen before, but in person, it feels more solid. It doesn't feel painted. it may very well be painted, but it looks a little different. It looks patinated almost. The Ito looks tight and a little bit more even. The fittings, the Fujikashira, look like things that I've seen 100 times, and they don't look particularly special. The scabbard looks like something I've seen, but it's a little thinner in profile and has a little bit of taper to it, and some of those little nuances, they're they're nice to see. Just not something that you generally expect. And the pattern, or rather the polish on here, is also really nice. There's some parts of it that are soft, but there's other stuff on here that, you know, I can make out little. I'm not sure if it's folded or if it's banding in the steel. I'm not entirely sure, but it has some character to it that I wouldn't have expected. And it reminded me why I should be hesitant when I see a photo of a sword and people say, "What do you think of this?" And it looks like something that's from the Part Spin in Long Quan. It's really easy to overlook a lot of small important things that you kind of have to see in person to realize, because this looks like a really nice sword for $500. It looks pretty good. I'm not sure if it's going to crack apart when I go using it. I hope not, but there's some pleasant stuff. So that's that's another thing that I set aside over here to. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, it was a nice sword and made me think I should probably have things in my hand before I comment on on a company, especially if I've never seen anything else from them. Dragon Sword is apparently an ex-Zisei employee who still contracts with them. You see Zisei products on their site. Yeah. And that, I don't necessarily know if I see Zisei products on their site, but I guess I didn't look particularly good. Anyway, it's nice. If he still does contract work with the polish, looks very similar to some of the stuff that I've seen on Zisei. The Zisei one does look like a nicer polish. It's similar in that they're both good, especially for the money, or better than average, certainly. But the one on the Zisei looks a little nicer. Can you do a murder face impression on request? I will be happy to, Mr. Bird, but you got to give me some lines. I'm not original enough to think of any. I need some lines with at least 30% more zazz. That's best I can come up with off the top of my head. Wasn't going to say it, but yeah. What, Kingfisher? What? I missed something. Everything is infinite. Call it blasphemy, but I just step on them and bend carefully. I can also use wooden levers. I missed something. But that does sound like a way to correct a bend in a sword. Who makes the best tight Ito wrapping on cheapo $100 swords? That's a hard question to answer. I don't know. So for $100 swords, the best wrap I've seen on a inexpensive sword actually came from a Ronin. But in fairness, some pretty bad wraps have also been seen on Ronins. But I did play with one of their RK series, their entry level stuff, and it actually had reasonably tight Ito for the $130 ballpark that it's in. But generally speaking, they all kind of pass. None of them are great, but I did have a Ronin cotton Ito one that was tight. Ryan sword would probably be the next one. I had a synthetic $135 sword that I tested from them that had tight Ito. Jakku would be in the running as well, but I don't know that I've played with many $100 swords from them. I did have a $230 9260 sword, which was very, very tight. It was a little bit more round in shape than I would like, but it was extremely tight. I think that the point is that it's a little bit variable, though. From each of the companies that I've talked about, I've had things that are very tight and in the good category, and I've had things that are less than ideal and kind of pass by the skin of their teeth. I haven't had enough of those from Ryan Sword to really have a really bad or a really great example, but the $135 one was pretty good. All right. No, Motahara did not pay me to review their swords. For full context, Motahara did initially like say, hey, we're looking for reviewers some many moons ago, and they had like people fill out an application to do it, which I did, and they did not choose me to review their swords. I later bought 2 of them secondhand from different people and at different times, and have hung on to them and used them and played with them and tested them. I did ask Jason, the owner of Motahara, if he'd send a review sample for me to check out, just something in a different. I looked at their Tencho, which is like a medium cutter and a light cutter, but they have other varieties of stuff. And if I could look at something else, just to have something else to show, because a lot of people ask me about them, and it'd be nice to visually show and articulate a little bit about why I like them. But no, Jason has never given me any money. And in fact, he rejected me the first time I offered to review the swords, but no chip on my shoulder. If you hear me give them glowing reviews, I think their products are good. You pay a lot of money for them, but I think they're really the one to beat. So if you have money and want something that is kind of the best quality out there for a semi-production kind of sword, I can't think of anyone that really does it better. You can probably get better in like higher end custom pieces, but not necessarily outside of that. Citadel is pretty good, but I think that the Motahara, the Evolution blades, do a better job on fit and finish than Citadel does. There's more handmadiness in some of the fittings on Citadel, which I like. I've made a video about what I thought about the difference. I do like both, but I think they make good stuff. Incidentally, it's also worth noting, I don't think I've ever been paid for any review. At least I really try not to. And it depends on what you mean by paid. So to me, technically, yes, I get paid for every review because I get a sword and then I don't pay for it. Even if I have to send it back, I get to have a thing to make content with, and then I'm usually not out of pocket. There have been cases where I've paid for shipping. I don't usually have to do that anymore. Most people will cover shipping to and from if I'm not keeping the sword. And the vast majority of time, vendors let me keep the sword, which is why I would break them most of the time. But I've never taken money to do a review. Sometimes people would give me money to buy tatami mats or cutting targets, never more than what you would spend on tatami mats and cutting targets, and that even bothers me. So now I tell people to send targets if they want them, but I don't take money, and I prefer that they send targets instead of money. And then sometimes they'll reimburse me for shipping. But yeah, no, I don't take compensation in terms of like for my time to do reviews. I don't want to. Not that I don't reserve the right to change my mind on it, but for the moment, I have a day job. I don't need the money. This is for fun, and I think money, like for me, mentally muddies the water. So I try to come out of it without money, and I'm still like kind of figuring out if I'm okay with having swords, like which have some value at the end of it. I'm still even on the fence about that, but I can kind of justify it to myself because I don't really have the time to break them all. Anyway, hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, I did not get paid for Motahara or from anyone, depending on how you define payment. Because if like getting a sword for free means I got paid, then I did. But I think a lot of other YouTube folks would say like sending me the thing to review and then not also $5,000 for my time to make a video and do it is not payment. Anyway, hopefully that answers the question. Also, I should also note, no disrespect to anyone who does it differently. I know I tend to get a little weird in the head about the money side of things. That is just me and my personal hangups. If there are other content creators that take money to do YouTube videos, I don't think less of them for doing that. I enjoy their content, and so I don't say that to throw shade at anyone else. So please keep that in mind as well. What did I do? You're laughing at me, but I missed the funny part. My Ryan sword Edo rep was absolutely immovable even after 2.5 years. Good. I think there's some variation in there, but I'm glad you're having a good one. I mean, Nodachi 9260 Unakobi need a better stand for cutting. I must have missed something. I love $100 blades because I don't have the heart to ruin better blades. That's a fair point. I mean, when people ask me what sword to buy to start, it's usually like spend the least amount of money and then get the stupid out of your system. That is high recommend. Excellent. Nathan Explosion. I don't know if I can do. I don't think I can do that one. It's tough. I haven't watched Metalocalypse in a hot minute. Some of the voices just like are voices that I've made for a long time, and it didn't dawn on me that it was Murderface until somebody pointed it out. But I don't know if I do a Nathan Explosion. Metalocalypse was some funny shit though. I still have a Battlecry sword in the box at this point. No, I'm going to put it on a box on the back of my bike. No worries, muchacho. No sellouts. You know, it's Eric. I hope it comes through that I don't think anyone that does it different is a sellout. I personally see a conflict of interest. Like, it's tough for me mentally, which you may have noticed in my videos, to separate, like, when somebody sends me a sword as a gift, like a private citizen, I really tend to like it, and it's like a bias, and it's a real thing, and I'm mentally in a positive spot because I'm humbled by that kind of gift from people. So I really like it, and like, that is not helpful in a review to come into it thinking one thing already. And money muddies the waters for me a little bit, and I don't need it to be a variable that does. I don't need it to be a question, and it wouldn't be. I don't think anyone would pay me anyway, and if they would, I don't think they would pay me enough to justify the headache of answering questions about being a sellout, and for me even like having to think about it and mentally separate myself from it. So I don't think that it necessarily is a bad thing. And I certainly think there are people out there more than capable of being impartial while simultaneously taking money to do a review. I'm just not sure I'm one of them. So I'd rather not have to find out. So I don't. But yeah, I'm sure other folks do. The other thing that I've kind of, like I did mention earlier, that having swords that I don't break means that I have a thing of value at the end. And so the hope is that I can make more content and keep them around as examples and do more comparisons and have them as a useful prop, is one way that I've kind of been able to justify it to myself. But yeah, uncharted territory for me. Joe is here. Hello. Stupid will never leave your system. Well, that's par for the course here. I've the pot calling the kettle black on that one. Yeah, I as well do my fair share of stupid things with swords. I would just say that when you start with a sword, you're probably going to have some preconceived notions about what it can and can't do, and what you can and can't do. And likely it will result in a sword that comes out the other end in a diminished condition in a way that is disappointing to you. So if you start with $1,000 sword, if you think, what if I'm only going to buy one sword in my life, what's the perfect one for me? And you hit the nail on the head and get the perfect sword for you. The likelihood that you're going to go and like whack a 2x4 with a nail in it, or a tree, or do something that is gonna make that sword worth a lot less money after you're done with it is pretty high. So to reduce the tuition cost in this hobby, buy the $50 Musashi sword, go learn what swords can't do as safely as you were able to, and then think about, what did you like about that sword? What did you not? Was it too big or too small, too heavy, too light? Did you not like the style? Or Katana's dumb, something. And then spend your money more wisely with that knowledge. Rehash the conversation. Well, I've only been streaming for about an hour and 15 minutes, so let me start from the top. No, I'm not even sure what I've talked about up until this point, Joe. I missed chat and probably screwed up a whole bunch of questions, but it's all good. I talked about swords, and that's really it. That's the whole conversation. That's cool. You watch the show. I just on my guitar playing some Death Clock tunes. I'm trying to think of the ones. There was like this. I can't even remember. They're cool tunes though. They're cool tunes. It was a fun show while it was on. I don't know if they're still making it or not, but I did watch a little bit of Metalocalypse. And I remember watching Mr. Pickles with my daughter too. That was another one. That's Mr. Pickles. It was the murderous Satan dog. And I think I watched it with my daughter when she was like 8. So parenting for the win over here. If you get a chance, it would be cool for you to review a Honshu 1060 broadsword. I hear your thoughts versus the Ronin Euro 1. I will ask. I do have a Honshu blade now. It's the Wakizashi, so I do have to review. Well, not I have to. I get to review one. I was sent one by the folks at Bud K, and I will get to swinging it around. I'm not sure how I feel about it just yet. But generally speaking, for like $100, it's cooler than I guess I expected. But I haven't played with it much. The broadsword, Shad, I know, I think has talked about it and featured it in a few different videos as well. So you might get a chance to see it there. Is that the one that you mean? The broadsword? It's like the Boromir looking one. I think it shows when folks are paid, such as Dutch bushcraft boys. I don't, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what comes through in terms of paid. I know when, if I saw other folks that talk about swords and they got paid to talk about them, as I think about Skolagrim or Shad or Metatron or Matt Easton or York Sprav, or there's a lot of other people that talk about swords on the internet and have a large enough following that they can charge a sizable amount of money to do a review. And I wouldn't think that the opinions that they would share would be false. I would think that they're after money to justify their time. But I'm not in that position. Nobody's offering me money that anyone offers to send me swords. I haven't had anyone. That's not true. I have had people offer money, but nobody's actually ever said what number it is. People have offered to compensate me for my time, and I've declined, but nobody's ever said, here's how much money we'll give you for your time. So I really don't even know what people would think it's worth. And my channel loves you. Thank you for the kind words, man. Those aren't for me. I was disappointed when the katana would not cut through machine gun barrel. We all were sad when we realized that swords were not as magical as we were led to believe. Buy the cheapest sword to get the stupid out. I am far behind on chat, Eric. That's what this is telling me. Oh my goodness. Mr. Pickles. Yeah, it's still on. They only have 3. They have 3 or 4 albums now. I know it's in syndication, but I thought like it ended on season 4 or something. I'll have to check it out. I'm not sure, but I think I watched. I can't remember honestly the whole story. There's there was some funny. There was. I remember laughing though. I remember it was a good time. Why can you buy a katana for $100, but it costs $300 for wakizashi? Economies of scale would be my best guess. Katanas seem to be a very, very popular item. There's lots of them. They're very prolific in terms of the variety that are manufactured in China. And I would guess that they can make it out of cheap enough and make them in volumes large enough to be able to still make money and sell them at that price. But when you're doing smaller batches, the cost per unit goes up. And so that's where you find wakizashi. And wakizashi tend to be the redheaded stepchildren of Japanese style swords. There's people that like tantos and a lot of people that like katana. But wakizashi, the middle child, doesn't seem to get as much affection. It's kind of that way a little bit in the reverse of that in like the antique side of things, where katana tend to be very expensive, especially katana tend to be on the more expensive side. Tanto also tend to be expensive, but you can usually find wakizashi at a much more economical cost for smiths of notoriety or elaborate fittings or koshirai. You can usually get a pretty good deal on wakizashi because they're less desired for whatever reason. But in doing that, that means if they are going to manufacture them, they cost more per unit, and they pass that price right back on to you. At least that would be my guess. That would be my speculation. Do you have different Zakuri geometries in your collection? What's your favorite here? I like Shinogi Zakuri blades with a bohi lately because they're hard to do well, and I think they're really pretty, and they make a swishy sound, which is helpful for me because lately most of what I do is swish the sword around in the air doing iaido. So that is my preference. I like all of them, though. I don't know that I necessarily have... I certainly have way more Shinogi Zakuri blades. I like big, chunky Okisakis as well. Those are pretty. Hira Zakuri blades are nice, but Hira and Shobu Zakuri I tend to be a little bit more specific on. I don't like most of the Hira Zakuri and Shobu Zakuri blades out of forges in China because I think they are just kind of slightly differently buffed Shinogi Zakuri blades, and they don't tend to actually have different geometries as they should. That's not always the case, but that seems to be the Hira Zakuri and Shobu Zakuri blades that I see. It's just a Shinogi Zakuri blade without a Yokote put on, and a Shobu Zakuri blade has generally a different profile shape than where it's more nuanced than that, I guess I should say. Unokobe Zakuri though tends to look about right, and those are fast, light, lovely blades. I like them all. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Liam. Hi, I recently had a sword addressed. It ended up being... I recently had a sword assessed. It ended up being a Soshu sword from 1430, assembling a dog-themed kosher set at the moment. Godspeed. Awesome. That is a lucky find. I like the Soshu school. A lot of people really like the Soshu school, though, so that's not a surprise. But yeah, kudos, man. It sounds like you came out ahead, hopefully. That generally doesn't sound like bad news anyway, if you had your katana assessed. And thank you for the super chat. Maybe the barrel was thin due to the shortages in the war. Cutting through stuff again. I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of the Hanshi Boshin. I own the katana. The steel is very well done. Tip heavy with a weird scob, but they made it stand up to stupid. Well said, sir. I'm not sure what to expect from this one other than I'm expecting that it's going to hurt my grip. Let me grab it here. Ouch. So I have I can't remember what they call this kind of finger well area here. There's a name for it. A sub hilt, I think, is what they call it. And I'm not sure my feeling on how this is going to work out for me, but I can also just grab it down here, and that's fine too. if I hold it here, then it doesn't let me be very nimble with the sword for some reason. I feel like I can't move it as freely as I otherwise would, even though that doesn't make any sense. It does feel chunky, though. This is not a light sword for its size. I can certainly feel the weight, and there's a lot of weight in the hilt area down here. But it seems well built. It seems like it's gonna, do stuff well. And for the money, this doesn't seem too bad. For the life of me, I can't understand why some of the Hanwei tactical wakizashi stuff still sells for a bunch of money, and this is over here for $100, and it's about, it's beefier, I guess, but it's still in the same kind of tactical vein. I'm not sure about all this other stuff. It's like a little, it's like wakizashi themed, but kind of, I'm not sure even if that would be the right case. It's more, I think it's probably closer to like a naginata blade maybe than a wakizashi. Anyway, I have one. It's a step outside the wheelhouse for me, though, Eric. It's more of a, but I'm going to break that one. I'm pretty sure I'm going to put it through hell anyway and go smack it around and see how well it holds up. But I'm venturing, I guess it's going to hold up pretty well. Where am I? Just sharpen my James Raw walkie, listening to the scream. The walkie blade costs more than the katana blade. Yep. Yeah, that's, if you're buying new stuff, that not a surprise. But usually walkies are cheaper. For a swordsmith, though, I don't know. A walkie just seems like something that would be a decent self-defense in areas where guns are prohibited. I don't disagree that a wakizashi, like if you're looking for a bedside weapon, would be preferable to a katana, but I don't know that I would choose a walkie myself. I think this messer would probably be a closer bedside weapon for me. Hunter, hey Matt, how's it going tonight? It is going. I'm probably going to wrap up stream here in the not too distant future, but I'm going to try and get through some questions before I do. Looking forward to the Zisei review. Me too. I can tell you that I practiced with it a little bit. It doesn't have a lot of Niku. It's pretty light. I'm not sure how well it's going to cut, though. I think it'll do okay. But I really like it for training. It is light, and at the moment, I'm having a little bit of elbow trouble. And the Zisei is is helping me with that because it is very light. It is very light, so it's kind of my favorite right now because it's a little kinder to my joints. But I really like it for training. It's quite a looker in terms of polish, and if those things are things you like, then it's worthy of consideration. I have a Huawei T10 Walkie Unokobe Zakura. I love it. I got it as a daisho by stroke of luck. Fantastic. I think Huawei does great stuff. I was having a conversation not all that long ago with Josh Marlin from Cottontail Customs, and he was telling me a little bit about some of his thoughts on the Huawei swords, and lots of valid points made that they are kind of the one to beat if you appreciate some of those little subtle things about a katana. Huawei tends to do the most of them right for the least amount of money. They make some pretty solid stuff. Zisei, by contrast, makes better polishes, and you can get some more elaborate things and slightly different things from them that at least I haven't seen from Huawei personally. But in terms of overall value, like I'd venture, I guess, that if you pick something different than polish to go on, and you were going to cut with it or something like that, and the polish was going to get diminished. Little nuances about the assembly and the handle, and some of the other stuff, Huawei does a little better. It's not to say the Zisei one. I don't know why I'm comparing the two. I don't really have two to compare. Zisei does a pretty good job. It's nice. Like for a minute now, Huawei has kind of stood out as somebody that does a lot of stuff right. It's nice that there's somebody else out there also doing stuff right, and that we have more and more companies kind of stepping above what we've gotten from Hanwei for a number of years, with cracked Suka cores. Not that all the Hanwei ones are bad, but it's a lot of variation, a lot of stuff that companies are doing better now, which is good. All right, where the hell was I? Grind that finger thing off. I think I can just take it off. I think I can take the handle off and pick something else. They also make a variety that doesn't have the sub hilt variety on it. So if you don't like it, there's an option that just doesn't come with it. Depending on the type of house, a lever action mag-fed crossbow bow would be a good option. Fair enough. I'll stick with a shotty. Just picked up a Hirazukuri Soshuden Wakazashi myself. It's off to Japan for Shinsa at the moment. Best of luck. Took me forever to raise a burr on mine when I put an edge on her. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the edge on this one just yet. I'll probably have to sharpen it. It doesn't have... yeah. It's a little obtuse at the moment. Did Lyd Thompson design the handle? I don't think so. I had a Ronin Katana from a friend who did me wrong, so I tried to break it before I threw it away. I smashed it against the cinder block wall for about 20 minutes and got tired. Like, damn you, friend who did me wrong. Your indestructible sword. Snub me for the last time. And then it breaks the garbage truck that it it tries to crush it and breaks the hydraulic press or something, and it'd be funny. It's a sub hilt fighter handle. Dropping knowledge over here, John. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm too tired to articulate if I have any original thoughts on it. It seems to lean into its strengths, but for some reason, even though it shouldn't, I don't turn my fingers this way when I handle swords, it seems to make me feel like it's going to be less dexterous in my hand. And it makes me also feel like it's going to bite my fingers when I go whack it into stuff, but that remains to be seen. I haven't done it yet, and I will do that. I think it might be one I have to wear a glove for, though. Wedged it against the wall to bend and put in the bin. Sad panda. All right, well, I'm going to wrap things up here soon. I'm going to read through and see if I can get some of the questions, but I'm missing chat. Sorry if I haven't gotten your... Sorry if I missed your questions. It's not intentional. Would probably choose a messer or an arming sword over... I think it would go single edge just because I'd want to... For home defense stuff, I'd want to be able to do reinforced blocks. And I'd want something short for hallways. I wouldn't want something too long, I don't think. Then I'm going to have lots of options. A knife wouldn't be my first choice, though. I have a new RK-style sword, and it seems better quality now after a few years. Ito is far better. The one thing I have to say is that I can see the ray skin panel terminate about a millimeter near the Fuji. Yeah, well, sometimes it's not good. Not uncommon, though. I start to see that sometimes over swords where the Ito starts to shrink or something like that with age, or the panels move around. I don't know about move around or if they shrink or something happens over time. Not uncommon to see, but not ideal, certainly. I'm glad the sword is not terrible. Home defense blade is moral laring. I think I had one of those. That would something about like that. I believe I had one. Would be my de facto. I have a Gununting that was made by John Lindemo with a short handle put on by the Mystery Man in Black, and I like that. This Messer would probably be along the lines. It's a little on the long side, but this would also be nice. Hard to pull out of my hand. Sharp on all the all the spots. It's a little bit long, and I could get a hand behind it to reinforce if somebody tried to whack me with a bat or something like that. Not that I'd hold up too much, but if I tried to do that with a double-edged sword, then that would go poorly. That would go poorly. Your kukri is your go-to home defense. I don't know. It's also funny. I feel a little remiss talking about home defense because I don't know if I can think about it. Like I'm not a home defense guru, and I do want to recognize that I'm the guy talking on the internet, right? So it's worth noting I'm no position of authority, all just spitballing, and I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to what to do in a situation like that. My personal choice would be a firearm, but if you're going with a weapon, even I'm just spitballing on it, I would certainly choose a blade, single-edged, something with a bigger spine that I could get kind of a hand on. In the event somebody pushed me or I needed to get leverage or exert leverage on it, I could do it something that I could move around with in a hallway without banging on the walls or tripping up by sticking the blade in the walls. Something that would be hard to grab out of my hand, so not like a long handle. I know like Katana and stuff like that people like, but you can grab onto the handle, and if you're not experienced at using the butt of the weapon for like hooking, or you don't practice with it in that way, then I would avoid having any long nubbins sticking out because it's easy to get the weapon taken away from you. I think if the case was that I was using one in a hallway where any of those things were useful, things would have gone so horribly wrong. Plus, I don't know. That's one of the things I remember from Eskrima is that everybody loses in a knife fight. Somebody's gonna, if I have a sword and I'm versus guy with bat, I think I'm either way not going to be happy at the end of it. Anyway, Messer would be a good pick in that situation. There's a couple. It would be less about the wall and the thing, but more about the tip getting stuck, or if you're trying to move your sword tip up to deflect, to block, to do something, to get in the way of somebody trying to punch you in the face, and the tip strikes the wall and holds you up and prevents you from moving your weapon where you need it to be when you need it. That would be the concern rather than the damage to property. And that's why like something too long, if you're, because I don't know, like when I go to, not that I train for a lot of like home invasion kind of drills or something like that, but if I do practice with swords, I'm usually in a pretty open space, and I don't train next to a wall with a sword. So if I'm whacking the tip in the wall, then presumably I might get a bat to the head instead of deflecting or blocking, which is also going to be tough because like assumably these things like happen at night. I'm drowsy and sleepy, and now I've got to be like a ninja master and avoid, stabbing myself, let alone somebody else. I want probably fewer edges on it, something resilient, and ideally something very familiar, which is why I like the Filipino one. I spent a little bit more time with those. A wakizashi wouldn't necessarily be bad though either. Those also feel pretty feel pretty good. But I don't think it'd be my first pick. Firearms first. That's the American way. All right. Well, we're talking about, if you're going to get a bat to the face and stabby pokey, of course, firearms. That's but just joining in, get all the good vibes about this scary talk here. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap things up. I've been streaming for longer than I expected to. I appreciate everyone that joined in. Sorry again if I missed your question. Throw it if you have something for me. You can ping me on the spots in the link to the video, and I will try to answer you. This is maybe the best one to go out on the evening on. Just hit them with the croquet stake of doom. That is, nothing can withstand. Because I still want to have a house at the end of it, Kingfisher. That's why. Because if I break out the croquet stake of doom, I won't have an upper floor to my home anymore. It'll take the highway out next to my home. It's too powerful. It's only for destruction. I couldn't possibly. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. Again, much appreciate that I can hop on here and have a lively time without any notice. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Thank you to everyone that asked questions. Apologies again to those I didn't get to. Drop me a line if you have anything you want me to answer, and I'll do my best to do it. That's all I've got, everyone. Cheers. Thanks for watching.